Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how CEOs, founders, and senior executives sell their ideas, point of view, and personal brand to the people who matter most. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want to build market eminence, amplify your influence, and attract high-value prospects, investors, partners, talent, and media opportunities with less chasing and more confidence. Let's go. Well, my friends, you've heard this term. You might not know what it means. You might not know how valuable it is, but we got to talk about mentoring, mentors, mentees, the whole mentoring landscape, both for corporate executives, for entrepreneurs, for everyone. And we have the mentoring expert, Lisa Fain. Welcome to the show.
So excited to be here, David. Thanks for having me.
So Lisa, you totally dominate this mentoring topic. Tell us a little bit about how did you come to the work that you're doing today, and what were some interesting pit stops along the way?
Yeah, it's, a little bit of circuitous path, right? But I started my professional career in law school I started after law school as a lawyer at a large law firm in Chicago doing management side employment law. And there was so much that I loved about that. And there was, I was able to counsel employers on how to create better workplaces. And I was able to really kind of dig in and do some problem solving. But it always felt like it was a little too late in the process for me. Meaning that by the time people would call their lawyer, there was a lot they could have done to have avoided that situation. And it was mostly around communication and really seeing each other and understanding one another. And after 10 years practicing in a large law firm, I was working many hours, and I had very young children at home. I had pulled in all-nighters in my suit from court the day before. I went downstairs to get some breakfast, and I went up, and back in the day, as you know, David, the way to know whether there was somebody who called you was not your cell phone. It was that red light on then your office phone. And there was a red light with a message from my then 4-year-old daughter who had speed dialed me and said, "Mommy, come home. We need a mommy, not a lawyer."
Wow.
And it was, as I say, the worst, best gift I ever got, because I knew I needed to be spending more time with my family. And so I looked for a position where I could do more of the counseling, less of the litigation, and really spend more time with my family. And I got an in-house job as an attorney for a company that was getting ready to have an IPO, to go have a public offering. It didn't end up having the public offering, but it did end up having a tagline that it wanted to be America's #1 choice in entertainment. And we had a great leadership team. We had a leadership team, but they were all straight white guys with Harvard, Stanford, and MIT business degrees, really good leaders, really smart people. But as their lawyer, my job was to say, wait a minute, guys, if we want to connect, we want to be America's #1 choice in entertainment, we have to connect with America. And they said, okay, I think what you're talking about is like diversity, equity, inclusion. Can you go figure that out for us? And if you want to motivate me, tell me to go figure something out, because I'm pretty passionate about inclusion, pretty passionate about that. And I ended up digging into that world and hiring a diversity and inclusion consultant. And eventually, when it became time to have an internal role, I put my hat in the ring for that role. And my boss then gave me a chance. But the next red thread is that our women's group wanted a mentoring initiative. And I knew just who to call. My mother, Lois Zachary, had founded the Center for Mentoring Excellence in 1992. She was one of the very first people who were doing mentoring in an organizational context outside of higher ed. And I said, Mom, our women's group wants a mentoring program. What should I do? And she said, well, bring me in and I will train the mentors and the mentees. And I said, Mom, I manage a budget. I can't say to my boss, can we hire my mommy? And she said, we'll figure it out. And we figured it out. And she was in the front of the room talking to the mentors and the mentees about the power of mentoring as a transformational learning mode. And I had been really thinking about the importance of conversation as a way to transform workplaces into more inclusive workplaces. And it was one of those moments where I just had an epiphany that these two things fit together. So long story, a little shorter, is I dipped my toe in the water to begin to work with her and help infuse inclusion into the work that we do at Center for Mentoring Excellence. And when we realized that it would work as a mother and daughter team, I joined her and been doing that ever since.
Wow. So you give up the internal role.
I gave up the internal role. I had already started to have a bit of a coaching practice on the side, doing executive coaching as part of my role in the company, and then went out into the entrepreneurial world. Never considered myself an entrepreneur, never considered myself a speaker, never considered myself an expert. And it was really through the passion of doing this and the love of really being in front of a room and seeing people's ideas expand, seeing them learn how to form these relationships across difference that are transformational, that, I developed a real passion for this work.
So I'm curious, tell me about Lois's entrepreneurial DNA. Was she a go-getter salesperson, or was she also just deeply steeped in the work and did not consider herself an entrepreneur either?
The latter. I think if you had asked her if she was an entrepreneur, she would have said no. She grew up, third generation Syracusan, very much raised in the model that, her husband should work and she should stay home. And she was incredibly bright and incredibly passionate about people being lifelong learners. Ironically, her maiden name was Mentor, Menter. But she went back to school when I was in middle school. She went to get her doctorate at Teachers College from Columbia University and in adult learning, and began to do work with boards of directors. And then realized that there was a need for succession planning and learning, and mentoring grew out of that into the entrepreneurial. It became a business for her, but she had written so much and she was so known in the space that her marketing was picking up the phone. And if she wanted to do it, she could do it. And if she didn't want to do it, she wouldn't do it, whatever it was. When I came on board, I didn't have this needed to be a more of a revenue generator for me. And I didn't know I had an entrepreneurial itch either, David, but we really together, began writing books together, and based on the thought leadership that she created, it's been a fun journey. And I think towards the end of her life, she really did start to think of herself much more as an entrepreneur.
That's incredible. Well, let's get into the meat of mentoring, because like I said in the intro, some people know what it is, some people think they know what it is, and some people have no idea what it is.
Yes.
So let's go Denzel Washington on this, Lisa. Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
I will. And I'm so glad you asked, David, because mentoring is really one of the most promiscuously used words in leadership development at all, right? You can ask people, who's your mentor? And they'll say Oprah or Maya Angelou or Nelson Mandela. And the question is like, do they know you? So, and the reason I say that is there's really 3 characteristics when you think about what distinguishes mentoring. There's this idea of reciprocity, right? So mentors give and mentors get, mentees give and mentees get. The reason that Oprah can't be your mentor if she doesn't know you is there's no reciprocity there. She can be a role model, right? She can be a source of wisdom, but not your mentor. So there's this idea of reciprocity. That's the first characteristic. Then there's the concept of co-creation. In a mentoring relationship, the mentor and the mentee co-create the terms of the relationship. What's so cool about that is there's really so few other relationships in one's professional world where you're really co-creating things. Bosses in a managerial relationship, you're not co-creating that relationship. So it's in a sponsorship relationship, you're not co-creating it in the same way. It's really in that mentoring context where you're both setting the guardrails. And the third, and perhaps the most important, is learning. The purpose, process, and the product of mentoring is learning. The purpose, the process, and the product of mentoring is learning. So it's a learning relationship that's co-created and that's reciprocal. It can be one-on-one. It can be a group mentoring context. It can be what I call complementary mentoring and others call reverse mentoring, where somebody more junior is mentoring somebody more senior, but it has to have those three characteristics of reciprocity, co-creation, and learning.
And this is very interesting to me because I'm sort of on the flip side of this. I'm steeped in the entrepreneurial world. So in the entrepreneurial coaching, consulting, speaking universe in which you and I both swim, there's paid mentoring. It's like, oh, I'm going to pay this mentor tens of thousands of dollars and they're going to show me the ropes. And coaching ranges from free to expensive to super expensive, training, free, expensive, super expensive, mentoring, free, expensive, super expensive. The context in which most of your work, right? So your books, Lois's books, are around the corporate flavor of this, where no money changes hands at all, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the concept, if the paid mentoring is really mentoring, and I mean, we could talk about whether it is really mentoring in the true sense.
Yeah.
Then the concepts of our book apply really in all of those contexts, right? The idea and all of our work is centered around this idea that the intentionality and the structure of mentoring is what will help you yield results. It's not this wing it, just kind of show up. Our clients, who hire us tend to be in the corporate world, for sure. Corporate, higher education, NGOs, that kind of thing, in the organizational context.
Yeah.
Not in that individual coach, individual mentor, paid context. And there's benefits both ways, right? There's benefits to hiring somebody, and there's benefits to co-creating this volunteer relationship as well.
Hey now, what a great episode, right? Are you ready to build your own market eminence game plan using the power of speaking, publishing, and podcasting? Book a chat with me to build your plan and see if and how I might help you further. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. No sales team, no pressure, no goofballs, just you and me having a CEO to CEO chat about what's possible for you and your company. Hop on with me, doitmarketing.com/call. And now, let's jump right back into the interview. I'm curious, when you're selling this to a corporate decision maker, I'm really seeing three categories of benefit. There's obviously benefit to the mentees and all the employees who are in a mentee role. There's benefits to the mentor. If it was just that, I don't think you could sell a lot of this. There's an enormous benefit to the organization or to the senior leadership, the C-suite, etc., if you have this mentoring infrastructure baked into your culture. How do you talk about that? How do you start to probe and ask questions about how they will value the culture that is created by a mentoring infrastructure?
Yeah, I love that question. So it's the triple win of mentoring, right? Mentoring is the win for the mentor, it's a win for the mentee, and it's a win for the organization or the industry as well. And the win for the organization or the industry, there's lots of different avenues, right? So organizations right now are concerned in a hybrid work environment, how are we going to connect our people? How are we going to create loyalty and retention, particularly among the younger generation that's entering the workforce? What are we going to do about knowledge transfer? We have all of these senior baby boomers, some even traditionalists still in the workforce who are going to be leaving, and they have a lot of knowledge. How do we give them the sense of satisfaction and make it also easy for them to share what they have learned with folks coming in? So we've got uniting a hybrid workforce. We've got knowledge transfer. We have attraction, retention. We have also inclusion. One of the amazing things that I love so much about mentoring is that when you have mentoring that's across difference, you really start to have behavior change where people understand what inclusive behavior is because there's accountability. So organizations that have been playing with very different inclusion strategies that haven't worked can really use mentoring as a way to develop inclusive behavior and ensure promotion of diverse associates to a higher level in a new way. So the way to answer your question, it depends on what the problem that the client is coming to me with is how I sell it to them. But we're so fortunate in the fact that people come now recognizing that mentoring is a great avenue to be able to do all of these different things that are concerns in a remote hybrid 2024 workforce. Oh, the other piece, the one benefit I didn't say, which I think is really important, is well-being. I'm super excited about the research that's coming out on mentoring now on the importance of well-being. And, the Surgeon General in 2023 came out with a study on the epidemic of loneliness in the US, which also has global implications and effects as well. And there's a lot of data showing that mentoring really has incredible effects on the well-being of employees, which is, of course, of concern to employers as well.
For sure. Lisa, I'm curious your opinion about this next thing. This reminds me of turn the clock back 20 or 25 years. So late 90s, early 2000s. Corporate America was introduced to the term coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was still kind of new and shiny 25 years ago, like, ooh, coaching. I need to have an executive coach. Would you say that mentoring, partly based on your fantastic work over the last, 15, 20 years, is mentoring where coaching used to be, and now we need to sort of introduce this into the corporate vocabulary, or is it already pretty well known and pretty well accepted?
I'm going to give you a very unsatisfying answer of C. It depends.
Okay.
Right? So, I think that certainly learning and development departments of large corporations for a long time have been fans of coaching. They pay for coaches. Coaching is a one-on-one relationship. Coaching is, it can have group coaching too, but for the most part, what's been utilized in the corporate setting are either small group coaching or one-on-one. It's very difficult for it to be scalable in the way that mentoring is scalable. And the other piece is you don't have the reciprocity in the coaching relationship in the same way. So you're not getting this triple win in the way that we just talked about. I think that many organizations have tried mentoring for a long time. They have in different areas within their organization, different verticals. There's this mentoring initiative, and most of them are what I affectionately call pair and pray, which is let's pair people and pray that it succeeds. And it becomes unsatisfactory because there's the fizzle, there's not the intentionality, there's not this understanding that just because you're a good leader does not mean that you know how to mentor. Right? Mentoring actually is a leadership skill. So it is becoming more widespread because I think organizations are really seeing that triple win. They're also realizing that the investment is it's more generative in terms of what it can yield. Well, one investment can yield in mentoring in terms of how it ripples out in the organization as well. The benefit to mentors that we didn't talk about, but that I think is important to this question, is that the data shows that mentoring makes mentors better leaders.
Wow.
So you get this thing of like, we're going to do leadership development work and we're not going to do mentoring. Well, you're missing that generative nature. If you do it the other way around, and by the way, I think leaders should be trained in lots of things, not just in mentoring, but it really does yield a lot of results. It's super exciting.
So tell me a little bit about how you work with your clients. What is, what's small, what's medium, what's large, and what would be a supersize engagement?
So I'll start with the last part of your question, which is a supersize engagement, and it'll help answer the other parts of your question. So my favorite kind of engagement is when a company comes to us and says, either we have a mentoring program that's broken, can you help us fix it? Or we don't have anything, can you help us start it? The kind of bring us in early really helps because mentoring programs will succeed when there is a mentoring culture. And a mentoring culture is a learning culture. And in any time you're trying to change the culture in an organization, that's change management work. Change management work requires alignment of senior leaders. It requires aligning with your leadership principles and your values and creating a communication strategy and designing a pilot to see what's going to work. and recruiting the mentors and the mentees and communicating with them and setting up a training and ongoing support through the mentoring initiative and analyzing the results, sending out surveys, doing coaching of mentors and mentees. So we do all of that. And I love doing that, setting the seeds in the culture work, designing the pilot, helping an organization through the pilot, and then helping them think through how are we going to scale this beyond. That's the grand poobah of all the work.
And Lisa, that happens over like 2-3 year type of engagement. That's a long-term thing.
Yeah, usually the initial culture work is 3 to 6 months. The first pilot is usually 12, and then there's some analysis, and then launching it again at scale. And sometimes at scale we step out. The idea isn't to have us forever and ever and ever, although we can certainly keep coming in. And there's ways we can do ongoing support. I do, as we've said already, a lot of keynote speaking. We have some communication tools, that kind of thing. And then people will also come to us for one-offs, right? We have a program. We think it's pretty well designed. Can you help us train the mentors and the mentees? Can you do a kickoff event for National Mentoring Month? Those kind of things as well.
So help me understand a little bit, kind of just granular zooming in. I'm a senior leader or some kind of leader inside a company. We're working together. You're helping us build this mentoring culture. I'm a mentor. I have a mentee. Is there spot coaching? Do I send you recordings of our calls? How do I get your feedback on, well, David, you were talking to Bob and you kind of went into problem solving without fully listening to the issue, blah, 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 blah. How do I kind of, what's the going to the gym look like?
Yeah. Well, it's not recordings of the calls, because honestly, if you want to continue to build trust with your mentors and your mentees, that has to be a confidential conversation. We actually offer something we call TBIs, touch-based interviews. What's really cool about it is it helps us get quantitative and qualitative data for our clients, which is the organization. It helps the mentor or the mentee whom we're speaking to get just-in-time coaching and feedback. And we get lots of qualitative data of the storytelling of what's working and what's not working, which, I'm not a numbers person. I'm a story person. So I love that stuff. And so a lot of clients love that because they can work with a mentoring expert who's their coach. And we'll do that usually 2 or 3 times during the mentoring cycle. And we develop this whole big report that we aggregate and we anonymize the data. We give it back to the client and we give them our observations and recommendations. Here are the things we think you should be doing to tweak the program. Here's what we're hearing that's working and what's not working. Here's some testimonials for you so you can go recruit more mentors, because everybody cares how David Newman did, and David Newman loves this program, and David Newman's mentee achieved this particular milestone, and how great is that? So we do that. And then we also provide sometimes like a block of retainer hours. So if somebody in the program needs coaching outside of the TBI process and they want to talk to somebody who can help them, we do that. And then the other piece that we love is we build capacity among the mentoring program administrators so that they learn how to do some of this coaching, and they can do that. They can fly on their own without us after the engagement.
Holy smokes, so much value in this episode. Listen, if you are loving what you're hearing, feel free to download, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to The Selling Show. Now, back to the interview. I'm curious, because you have such a body of work and you've codified this, you've practiced this, you've implemented this, you've got results and research on this. Have clients asked you, hey, we have an L&D team, we have an HR team, Lisa, can you certify us or license us in your intellectual property so that we can now push this forward on our own?
So we do have a facilitator certification program. We have a train the trainer program that organizations will often bring us in if they have enough people. And actually, your question's really timely, David, because we're just launching our very first public train the trainer program typically, as I say, we're hired by organizations who'll say, we have 5 people who can do the training and lead the programs going forward. Can you certify them? Absolutely, we can do that. But there are organizations that don't have enough capacity to do that. So we have our very first public train the trainer program that's beginning in 2025 that we're really excited about as well. So that's an experiment on this end.
Yeah.
And I'm learning a lot about the doing it in a public forum. But if folks are interested in that, they can certainly reach out. We'd love to have them in the program.
Excellent. And tell me a little bit about how this is sold. So because I talk to a lot of consultants and thought leaders, and there seems to be 2 very different stories about selling leadership training, for example, to a corporation. First school of thought: never sell to HR. HR is the enemy. HR is the gatekeeper. HR bad. Sell to the line executives, sell to the decision makers, sell to the C-suite. Second school of thought: oh my God, we sell millions of dollars to HR, L&D. They're our primary customer. They love people like us. They want to talk to people like us. They don't have the skill set. If you put me in front of a CHRO, put me in front of a VP of HR, I will sell them something. They will love it and it'll be amazing. Literally like night and day. Like never sell to HR, always sell to HR. What's been your experience? What tends to work for you?
I grew up with HR folks, right? I grew up in the employment law world, working with HR folks. In the corporate world, I reported into HR, and I'm a big fan of the work that HR can do. A lot of times, organizations, if they have a mentoring program administrator that will sit in the talent function, so they're reporting into the chief talent officer. They are the chief talent officer, the chief learning officer. And mentoring really does have to map up to leadership competencies in order to infuse and become part of a mentoring culture. So I'm a big fan of HR. And I've also seen this really be successful. Like, one of the most exciting moments of my own professional career was when an organization, we'd been doing this work through the DEI vertical within an organization, which happened to be within HR. And the CEO was part of the program. And he decided that he wanted to require all of his direct reports to be mentors. So that work came in from the leadership and not from HR, right? I mean, they were introduced to it through HR. So I've also seen in organizations where when a leader is committed to mentoring and committed to creating intentional mentoring that yields results, the work can come from them. But most often, the folks who come to us in terms of outreach, where we're picking up the virtual phone or answering the virtual email, are coming in through an HR function. And they tend to be thinking about this pretty holistically when they think about how do they integrate it into the overall learning development strategy. So I'm a big fan of doing it through that area.
Excellent. Now, I think we have to address the elephant in the room. So you and I are recording this after the 2024 presidential election. For the last 3-4 years, though, this has been a thing, which I'm not crazy about, but it's a thing. DEI has gotten a bad rap. I mean, it has been thrown under multiple buses. As of January 2025, that's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better.
Yep.
So what's your take on not hiding it, but let's say folding it under this mentorship and sort of, baking it in without that label being attached as a stigma?
Yeah. It's a provocative question. It's an important question. And it's an incredibly timely question. The answer is that mentoring is a vehicle for better leadership behaviors, and better leadership behavior is inclusive behavior.
Yeah.
And inclusive behavior is the behavior that yields the results that organizations are looking for, right? So how do you do it? You sell the results, and the vehicle is still about appreciative inquiry, right? Which is, asking questions and curiosity and inviting authentic conversations and being curious about difference and learning to share and be vulnerable about your own journey without judgment so that you can invite others to do that. That's inclusive behavior. That's actually the work of DEI, right?
Yeah.
Seeing others for who they are. How do you really invite authenticity? How do you really create a space of trust and psychological safety where people can succeed? It's not the same as, I, having been a leader of DEI and having in my network a lot of really respected leaders of DEI who do the work on representation and integration into supplier diversity and integration into recruitment and all of those things. It's not the same quantitative work, but it is a way to begin to work on those behaviors.
Yeah.
When you can't say DEI, but you can create the behaviors of inclusion that yield the results that inclusion, an inclusive work environment lifts up everybody.
Yes. Yes.
And if you focus on that, rising tide lifting all boats, and the behaviors that yield to that, and mentoring is an amazing vehicle for that, which I find super exciting.
Yes, absolutely. Well, as we're landing the plane, I'm curious, what is, as far as new and exciting, you mentioned the initial public offering. Is there a new book on the horizon? What is exciting and coming attractions for the next little bit of time?
Yeah, well, for sure, the public TTT, which we're doing in 2025. I'm actually really excited about our peer mentoring offerings. And this is actually, to answer I'm connecting the dots by verbalizing this really for the first time since the election, which was just 48 hours ago, maybe less still. Is peer mentoring is also a really great way to get at that inclusive behavior, right? Because peer mentoring is about creating cohorts that can rely on one another, that can share their experiences, that create the sense of belonging and accountability. There's all sorts of research that shows that just having just one person at work who cares if you show up makes a huge difference in terms of people's work-life satisfaction. Imagine having an entire cohort where you can really support one another and share with one another. So the work on peer mentoring that we're doing is really exciting. We have a newish offering on helping organizations create peer mentoring circles that are self-sustaining. So we start them off and we teach them how to facilitate it, and then they're off and running. And it just creates, it's like the mastermind principle. A lot of people have heard about masterminds, but it's creating that in a much more scalable, doable way within organizations. So we're really excited about that.
That is very cool. Well, I know listeners are going to want to get connected and stay connected to more Lisa Fain brilliance. Where can we send people? What links should be in the show notes?
Beautiful. So the first place is our website, which is centerformentoring.com. Center spelled the American way, CNTER, and then the word for spelled out, centerformentoring.com. You can find me, Lisa Z. Fain, on LinkedIn. And those two will get you all of our information, and happy to chat with any of your listeners, David, just to brainstorm ways to create more mentoring cultures in their work environments.
Totally fantastic. And of course, books on Amazon and wherever fine books are sold, correct?
Absolutely. Bridging Differences for Better Mentoring and The Mentor's Guide, 3rd edition, are two of our favorites. And there's lots of others where that came from as well.
Lisa Fain, you are a rock star. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, David. What a great conversation.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.